Good morning, everyone. So, as we think about the future of our planet, food waste is one of these problems with huge economic and environmental impacts that is a really obvious and easy target for improving the world that we live in. But measuring food waste is hugely problematic, and in particular, measuring household food waste, which accounts for approximately half of all food waste in developing countries, has been really difficult. And it's difficult because it's one of those things that people are not very aware of, which makes them really bad reporters of their own household food waste. It's also one of those things that is hugely laborious to actually measure accurately. And most measurement methods, even when we do take the time, either as researchers or participants, to engage in them, are still fraught with errors. We also need methods that can measure both between household and within household variation, which makes measurement even more complicated. Obviously, mobile apps are kind of an obvious choice here because they can really reduce the kind of burden of doing daily diary studies as an option for improving the accuracy of measurement here, especially when we consider that new Bluetooth technologies can allow for syncing of food waste amounts, precise amounts, directly to an app. This could be a huge improvement on our current methodology. It can also be a huge improvement on the way that we actually do interventions for food waste management as well. But there's a lot that we don't know about how this will actually work in the real world. So to this end, the MITRE Corporation partnered with Gallup, and we conducted the MITRE Gallup National Food Waste Study in 2023. We, as part of this larger study looking at food waste management behaviors and attitudes, we also piloted the MITRE food waste tracking app. And this was done with a sample of participants kind of randomly subsampled out of a larger stratified sample from the Gallup panel, a large probability-based panel of US adults. We had 451 participants who engaged with the app. They were asked to engage with the app for 7 consecutive days, making daily diary entries as they were actually throwing away and wasting food. We didn't call it wasting to them, we called it throwing away or disposing of, just to be clear. We randomly assigned them to conditions. So we had a condition which we were kind of evaluating how well people could estimate the volume of their food waste. So using cups and tablespoons, using kind of visual estimation based on fist versus thumb estimation. And we were able to compare that to, again, a randomly assigned group of people who got the Bluetooth scale and were able to provide exact measurements either by typing in the measurement or through Bluetooth syncing directly from the kitchen scale to their phone. We also had random assignment to the order, whether they received a survey first or a daily diary first. Again, that was able to kind of look at carryover effects as well as to evaluate what it's like to recruit people kind of cold into an app versus whether you have the warm up of the survey and evaluate what the methodology is like there. We had participants from all over the United States except Wyoming. I don't know why. They weren't into this. And we were able to really learn a lot of unique insights from both the survey and the food app about the food waste patterns and attitudes, as well as kind of improving these methodological considerations. Again, the point of this was to be able to compare kind of our recall estimates on self-report methodology through surveys to the daily diary methodology. And so a lot of the design considerations here were based on making the best possible comparisons between those. I'll zoom through a little bit of this methodology info, although I find it hugely fascinating, so please ask me after if you also do, especially those of you who are interested in the food apps and things like that as well. Basically, we randomly assigned people to these study groups. A few design choices I did want to just call out. We asked everyone to participate in kind of the same 7-day discrete period of tracking during the food daily diary, but we staggered deployment across the summer months for each of these different groups. Just helped our operations and ability to kind of track and evaluate how things were going on the app so we can make adjustments as needed. We made a lot of design considerations for the survey as well, again, to make it as comparable as possible to the app data. So for example, best practices like sending a pre-communication to say, hey, you need to be paying attention to your food, maybe the things you throw away, maybe make some notes or something like that so that your recall is better. We're going to be asking you about it. So again, all done to make sure that our concordance rate estimates were really defensible. We also designed a separate enrollment survey to kind of gauge how well people were thinking about the app, if they had any concerns about engaging with the app, and kind of set that up as a separate process apart from the survey recruitment process, so that, again, we could make some kind of evaluations about how people were engaging with the app. Other design choices, thinking about things like when we started the daily diary rather than starting on a Monday, we chose a Wednesday, thinking about patterns of break off, wanting to capture those weekend days as well as weekdays. Basically, a lot of smart choices about incentives, making sure we are incentivizing people to engage daily, but also incentivizing people to complete the entire 7 days. So feel free to ask me more questions about this. Quick snapshot of what this looked like when I say staggered deployment and having all these different study groups. Complicated design, but it worked really well for us to be able to kind of make adjustments as needed and evaluate both survey and mobile app engagement. This is in your handout. There's also pictures of the app and its functionality in the handout as well, if you're curious about the functionality of that. Pipeline of research development, really just wanted to call out here that we engaged in a lot of processes of external partner engagement to make sure that both the app and the survey were constructed in a way that fit best practices and was really going to meet the needs of the food waste tracking efforts. Also engaged in both cognitive interviews and user experience testing to kind of perfect the procedures as well, and made continuous updates throughout, again, those staggered fielding. Really extensive communications plan here. I don't expect you to read every line, but just know that we thought really carefully about how we engaged with participants to make sure that they were informed and really brought along through the whole journey to maximize participation rates. Again, cognitive testing and user experience testing. We encountered challenges along the way, but really thought through how to adjust for those. Found that overall, people who got the scale actually did have slightly better participation rates throughout the study. There were also differences kind of through this pipeline as well. Again, the scale did boost engagement, again, especially that drop-off between consenting and actually making entries. We found that overall the scale also helped to boost people's participation if they were in younger age groups or non-white participants, which are both groups that we're really careful to try to boost response rates with. There was less participation rates among older adults as well as male respondents. And also, really importantly, there were some attitudinal and behavioral differences. Mostly food waste management was very similar between people who chose to engage with the app versus just the survey, but there were some important differences. People who engaged with the app cared more about food waste and they were more concerned about it and more motivated to actually do something about it. Same thing on the order effects between survey first and having the app first as well. Overall, people who did get the survey first, slightly higher response rates as well. And then finally, because I'm out of time, just a note overall about kind of the evaluation of how this technique worked. In terms of measurement, we did find that people were less likely to underreport their food waste if they used the app versus the survey recall method. So a little improvement there to measurement. There were specification errors sometimes in both methods, but having the app was really helpful because we could include so many more like FAQs and supplemental materials, tables, so people could really figure out how to record their food waste better than what we could include on the survey, especially for male respondents. But finally, there are some concerns about non-response, obviously the lower levels of response to the food app than we typically see to surveys, but more concerningly, just the fact that there are obviously some patterns of who does and does not actually engage with the app that make them different than normal respondents. Again, older respondents, males, that's easier to adjust for, but some of those attitudinal differences are a little bit trickier to plan for and adjust for that we want to take into account in future research. Thank you.